It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the 6 movies of March 23rd, 2007. We've got a wide assortment of films to look at. A new Ninja Turtles movie, a new movie starring Mark Wahlberg, directed by Antoine Fuqua. We have the sequel to The Hills Have Eyes, the remake from last year. We have a inspirational sports movie starring Terrence Howard and Bernie Mac, an inspirational movie starring Adam Sandler and Don Cheadle. We also have a family adventure film starring Dwight Schrute from The Office. So we got a lot of movies to get to here. I'm already wasting so much of your time right now. Let's just go ahead and jump on into it. We'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, which is TMNT. Ah, yes, the movie that was made for every Ninja Turtles fan who grew up with the show back in the 80s and 90s. Here's the new movie for you. Now sit back and let us spend 15 minutes giving you the origin stories of all these turtles and what they're doing now, because that's just one of the many problems that this movie has right from the get-go. But in this movie, after having grown apart following the final defeat of their arch-enemy, the Shredder, the 4 Turtles, Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, and Michelangelo, are set to reunite and overcome their faults to save the world from evil ancient creatures. Which, I mean, this movie really is one of those movies where it's just like, it's not a bad movie at all, but man, there's a lot of stuff in here that really just ruins the ebb and flow of the movie. Like I said at the beginning, the first 15 minutes is literally nothing but them just getting you acquainted with these characters again, like we're meeting them for the first time ever. I mean, it's supposed to take place after the events of what's supposed to be the last defeat of the Shredder, even though they teased that he's still alive at the end of the movie, which they were teasing for a sequel, but of course that never happened because the film didn't do so well. I mean, it wasn't like I said, it wasn't a flop by any means necessary, or it was a bad movie per se, but it just didn't live up to the expectations that I think a lot of people really had set up for it. I mean, didn't even make $100 million back, but it was such a small budgeted movie compared to most CG animated movies. It also helped that this was also a Weinstein Company release as well, along with Warner Brothers, so you could honestly say that this is probably the best Weinstein Company animated film they did, but I digress. But, yeah, the biggest problems with the movie is that they spend way too much time setting up these characters like they're supposed to be brand new to this audience, even though this movie is clearly supposed to be taking place after the events of some big event that happens, so people should already be acquainted with who everybody is in this movie. Plus, the reasons for them getting back together really doesn't make a whole lot of sense per se. The big threat in this movie is not that intimidating whatsoever. It just leads to kind of a boring climax at the end, where they have to get all these creatures together to, like, save the world and all that, and it just doesn't work overall. I mean, and also, like I said before, there's way too much deep thoughts and storylines going on in this movie that just really, really kind of ruins the ebb and flow in here. Everyone in this is way too serious. Everyone in here is just way too, they're not as funny as they should be. None of these characters are as funny as they should be. Like, everybody's taking it way too seriously, but I mean, they've got good voice actors to do these voices. You got James Arnold Taylor, who of course is known for his work on Star Wars, Nolan North, a great voice actor, Mitchell Whitfield, Mikey Kelly. They have some good names attached to this movie. I mean, they do a pretty good job of playing these roles very well here, but yeah, the few funny moments that were in that trailer there, that's the few funny moments that was in this movie. I mean, there's not a whole lot of really funny moments in this film in particular, but in addition to them, you've got this star-studded ensemble supporting cast, including Sarah Michelle Gellar as April O'Neil, Chris Evans starring as why can't I remember his name now? Casey Jones. I should have known that, but Mako, who plays Splinter, who, truth be told, is probably the best thing about the movie in general. He does a very good Splinter in this. Patrick Stewart, Ziyi Zhang, Kevin Smith, the narration by Lawrence Fishburne. I mean, I'm very conflicted on this movie. And like I said, I don't hate it, but I don't really like it either. And thankfully, we did get a much superior animated movie that came out not but 16 years later with 16 years later, 2000. That came out in 2023. This is 2007 with Mutant Mayhem. And if I'm going to choose one or the other, Mutant Mayhem's going to win easily. I would rather watch the live-action Ninja Turtles movie, and I like the live-action Ninja Turtles movies more than most people do, but bottom line, it was good that Nickelodeon came in and brought the franchise back, because everything they've done since they got it really has helped. It really has helped boost the Ninja Turtles back into relevancy. Some really good TV shows that have come in the process. They had that great one in 2012. They had the Tales of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Of course, we just had Mutant Mayhem, and I haven't seen the new series, but I mean, considering that I've liked what they've done so far with it, I got to get around to watching it at some point. But this one, I think, took itself way too seriously. It's not that it's a bad movie per se, just way too much is going on in here. It doesn't know if it wants to be a movie for the Turtles fans or just wants to be an origin story for the people that are just coming into it. It can't decide on which direction it wants to go with. And there isn't really a good story overall to really work with it in general. I mean, there's not much here about it that I can really appreciate about it, but like I said, I can't say it's a bad movie per se, but just more of an underwhelming film in general. If I had to pick the worst Ninja Turtles movie, probably Ninja Turtles 3 would still be at the top of the list, but this is right next to it. I mean, this isn't much of a good movie in general. I was kind of let down by it when I saw it again recently. Yeah, it's not as good as it should have been, but it should have been so much better. So that is TMNT. So let us go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is Mark Wahlberg in Shooter. So in this movie, Mark Wahlberg plays Bob Lee Swagger. Talk about the name right there. Who is framed for murder by a mercenary unit operating for a private military firm. Danny Glover's part of that. You also have Michael Pena in here, Kate Mara, Ned Beatty among the cast in here. Antoine Fuqua doesn't really make a whole lot of bad movies per se, and this is a good movie, not a great movie overall, but like it's not that it's like I said, kind of like with TMNT, it's not that it's a bad movie, but there isn't really enough about it to distance itself from other movies in general. I do think what carries it through is the direction by Fuqua. Mark Wahlberg, I think, very much fits the role very well here. He has that charisma that makes him an appealing action star in general. I just wish there was a much better movie involved in here that did kind of stand out on its own, like it kind of distanced itself from other movies in general of this type. And unfortunately, there really is not a whole lot there that kind of distances this from other movies very similar to this. And this is based off of a series of books too. I think series of books or one book. I know this one in particular is based off of Point of Impact by Stephen Hunter. I thought maybe it was a continuing series of books, but maybe I could be wrong on that. Maybe this isn't like Jack Ryan or what's the other one? Jason Bourne. But yeah, as far as the film itself goes, it's fine. I mean, there's some pretty cool action sequences here and there, but it's not enough for me to say that this is one you gotta see. This is more just kind of like if there's nothing on TV, you can just pop it on and you can enjoy it for what it is. I mean, this did actually lead to a television series, so it does have its fan base overall, if there's a television series based off of it, but like I said, nothing too spectacular about it, nothing too amazing, but Mark Wahlberg usually doesn't turn in a bad performance in movies like this, so watch it for that. Other than that, don't expect anything else from it per se. So with that said, let us go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Rainn Wilson in The Last Mimsy. So in this movie, two siblings begin to develop special talents after they find a mysterious box of toys. Soon the kids, their parents, and even their teacher are drawn into a strange new world and find a task ahead of them that is far more important than any of them could imagine. Bottom line, this is one of the many, many E.T. clones we've gotten since the original film came out. And coincidentally, this is actually one of two E.T. clones that came out from New Line Cinema in 2007. But if your biggest names in this movie are Jolie Richardson, who hasn't really done anything of noteworthiness in terms of leading roles since maybe 101 Dalmatians, a couple other movies in particular, but that's all I remember her from. But I guess she was in Nip Tuck, Event Horizon, The Patriot. But Timothy Hutton, I mean, he hasn't really done any big leading roles since he won that Oscar in the 80s. Catherine Hahn, who was still kind of seen as kind of a character actress back with her work in Crossing Jordan and in the Anchorman movies. Michael Clark Duncan, Rainn Wilson. Like, if those are your biggest names in the movie, probably not a good sign going forward for this film in general. But I don't know about this one. I mean, kind of like with TMNT, it's just like, I can't really say it's a bad movie per se, but there's just no purpose for it to existing, honestly. I mean, TMNT kind of existed because Ninja Turtles is a name and people will go to see it just for that, but the story didn't work well here. I don't even know what the story is in this movie that makes it so magical and mystical. It's also, for some reason, the only other film that Robert Shea, who ran New Line Cinema, directed, because of course he did The Book of Love back in 1990, and then he did this, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense in general, but there you go. I mean, that's a little bit of history for you, that the founder of New Line Cinema directed this. And quite frankly, I don't know why. I mean, nothing about this movie makes any sense whatsoever of why it exists. I mean, what am I supposed to take away from this film in general? Maybe if there was something magical happening that actually looked kind of cool in general, but no, there's just nothing in there that makes it worth it in the end. It's just kind of like, why am I even here? Why am I even sitting through this movie? There's just nothing there that makes it worth it in the long run. So, yeah, bottom line, I didn't like it. I didn't like it one bit. But then again, I could also say the same thing about our next movie, which is The Hills Have Eyes 2. Well, obviously, we need more blood and gore because, hey, it worked great for Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning. Wait, no, it didn't. And yeah, way to take the pretty awesome teaser trailer and just butcher it with that terrible narration there. So this is the sequel, of course, to the 2006 movie, which is not directed by Alexandre Aja, but this film follows several New Mexico Army National Guard comrades as they fight to survive against the mutant people living in a military base in the New Mexico desert. And like I said before, it's nothing but the original film, except much bloodier, much gorier, and much stupider than the first movie was. At least the first movie had legitimately good scares in it. This does not. This is the definition of a bad horror sequel that is literally just upping the violence, upping the ante, and just doing nothing of value whatsoever in the long run. It's a film that is so devoid of anything good story-wise and for anything of noteworthiness to it that they made it because the first movie was a surprise success, so cash in as quickly as you can with a cheap sequel, and this is exactly what this is. A pretty lame, cheap sequel, which is shockingly written by Wes Craven, who I really think deserves a lot. But then again, I say deserves a lot better, but he was also writing stuff like Curse at the same time this was coming out, so why should I even bother to think that this was going to change anything after watching something like that? But, not much more to say about this one per se. I think most people agree that this movie sucks. Even if you didn't like the original, even if you like the original film, the remake per se, it sucks. It just sucks completely. So, how about we get to some good stuff again? Here's Adam Sandler and Don Cheadle in Reign Over Me. Another one of the many movies to have their storyline taking place after the events of September 11th. And in this movie, you have the story of former college roommates and old friends Alan and Charlie, Alan being played by Don Cheadle, Charlie being played by Adam Sandler, the latter of whom is struggling with depression after the death of his wife and daughters in the September 11th attacks. And this one kind of gets under the radar, per se. It wasn't a big hit when it came out, critically or financially. I mean, critically, it did fine. It was actually one of Adam Sandler's better received movies in general around that time, but the film wasn't a big hit because people wanted to see Adam Sandler be stupid in a comedy instead of actually seeing him in a serious role. And, of course, because of that, he had to go back and keep making stupid comedies in general. But this really is a really good underrated film, and it really does show what Adam Sandler can do as a dramatic actor as a whole. Whenever he does dramatic roles, he usually knocks it out of the park. I mean, he's really good at these various dramatic roles. In this movie, he does it so well here. I think he works very well with the chemistry between him and Don Cheadle. You can believe that they are friends, and you can believe the little relationship that he has with Liv Tyler in here. Jada Pinkett Smith is also in here too. Donald Sutherland, Saffron Burrows, Melinda Dillon. This was actually the last movie she ever did before she retired from acting, and of course she passed away last year. But yeah, it's definitely a much better film than I think people let on. I think it's because of Mike Binder, who Mike Binder directed The Upside of Anger, which is another criminally underrated movie that came out around the same time period, 2 years prior, and yeah, this one kind of gets pushed off to the side in general, but it really does show what Adam Sandler can do with a much bigger dramatic role, and I think we'd later see that down the road in movies like Uncut Gems, of course, and Hustle. This is a really good movie, and one that I think definitely deserves to be seen. It's a very good film, a lot of good performances all around, a really good storyline, just a really good film that sadly didn't get the attention it deserved. It definitely deserves the attention that it deserves. Go ahead and check this movie out. I highly recommend it. Right on for me. It's probably overall the best movie that came out this entire weekend, in my opinion. But with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last one we have here. That's Terrence Howard and Bernie Mac starring in Pride. My God, this was one of the most generic sports movies you'll ever see, if you even want to call it that per se. But In this movie, you have the story centering around Jim Ellis, who is a Philadelphia swim coach, and a grouchy but caring janitor, Elston, played by Bernie Mac. And the two have a short-lived rivalry before becoming good friends. They also, and of course, Jim Ellis has to lead this swimming team to a national championship and all, and its heart is in the right place. The casting overall is really good. There's also Kimberly Elise, Tom Arnold, in a very rare dramatic role where he actually isn't too bad in here per se, but it's just everything else about the movie is just so by the numbers underdog sports story that it just really gets boring right from the get-go, and it just never really lives up to what you would expect a movie like this to do with if they're trying to take it to the next level. If you're trying to do something on the line of Remember the Titans or something like that. But no, this falls into the category of the most generic sports movie you can think of, wasting two pretty solid performances by Terrence Howard and especially Bernie Mac. I talked about it not too long ago with somebody about, when we got the news that Netflix was carrying the Bernie Mac show, and it just made me realize, man, Bernie Mac, if he had been around, if he didn't die in 2008, it would have been really cool to see what would have happened if he had gotten more dramatic roles, because I feel like he could have been a really great dramatic actor, and this movie has one of those examples where I think that definitely shows, but unfortunately he passed away, taken from us way too soon, but the film, unfortunately, is just a typical by-the-numbers underdog sports movie, and not a very good one per se. Like, maybe Disney could have made this better, but not by much. But at least they've had a better track record on these sports movies than other studios have. But yeah, this one just doesn't work in general. I was kind of let down by it when I saw it because I really wanted to see Bernie Mac in a more dramatic role, and it just didn't work. So yeah, that's a hard skip on Pride. Just avoid it. And so, with all of that said, we're going to wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Now, the next time we meet, we'll wrap up the month of March with 3 movies, including Will Ferrell and John Heder in the ice-skating comedy Blades of Glory, Disney's first movie under the new regime of John Lasseter with Meet the Robinsons, and we also have Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Isla Fisher in a criminally underrated film, The Lookout. So we'll take a look at those 3 movies. That'll be coming up on tomorrow's show. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification button, as well as that bell, because you get updates on when new videos come out, and we post new videos here every single day. Now, with all that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.